So we're going to begin our class with a little some prayers and meditation. And I think Mary Ellen, you're the head honcho here. So we begin with this famous verse that is attributed to Atisha, taking refuge, Mahayana refuge, and generating bodhicitta. Sangye churang soke chognam la, jangchu badu dagni kapsu chi, dagi chunyen gi pe sognam gi, drola penchir sangye drupa shok. I go for refuge until I am enlightened to the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Supreme Assembly. Through the collections I create through listening to the Dharma, in this case of this, this class, may I become a Buddha in order to benefit migrating beings. Sangye churang suki chognam la, changchu baru dagni kapsu chi, dagi chunen gipe sognam ki, drola penchir sangye drupa sho. And then offering a short mandala. By offering this ground, that means you imagine either in your mind the ground of your world or your mandala plate, which you're visualizing as a as a world, or this mudra, hand mudra. By offering this ground anointed with perfume and strewn with flowers. So this is kind of like the preparation when you're making offerings, like the preparation when you get up in the morning, first cleaning your room, cleaning the altar, and putting on, putting some fragrant incense in the air and so forth. By offering this ground anointed with perfume and strewn with flowers, adorned with Mount Meru, that's Rirab, the 4 continents, the sun and the moon, and other things, visualized as a Buddha realm, may all migrators enjoy a pure realm. And then while still not yet having offered the, the mandala, think of it as a offering to the omniscient mind of the Buddhas to bless us to receive the teachings, to turn the wheel of Dharma. O holy and perfect pure Lama, from the clouds of compassion that form in the skies of your Dharmakaya wisdom, please send down a rain of vast and profound Dharma, precisely in accordance with the needs of those to be trained. Idam Guru Rana Mandalakam Niryatayami. Okay. So we're also going to begin with a little physical meditation. So just say hello. I missed some people. Say hello to Richard and Anna, Paul, Jennifer, KT, and Karen. I think you were already here. Good to see you all. We're going to begin with our stabilizing meditation, first of all, breathing meditation, like among the 37 harmonies or wings of enlightenment, factors conducive to enlightenment, of the 4 close placements of mindfulness, which is the first. This is mindfulness on the body. So recognize that you're breathing. Don't control it. Once you've recognized it, hold it in mind, the mental factor mindfulness. Recognize when you're breathing in, when you're breathing out, and recognize when it is a short breath, because they do vary, when it is a long breath. Aim is to let go of all of the thoughts that were present in your mind, so that it reaches a state of quiet mind. And then in the subsequent meditation, we'll try to replace that quiet state with a positive motivation. Be aware, like having a little part of your mind watching if thoughts are present, if your mind is wandering onto plans or memories or so forth. Sometimes likened to a spy, a little corner of your mind. The rest of your mind is watching the breathing. One small part is watching whether thoughts are arising. If they do arise, recognize that and let go of them and invest that energy that would have been spent on pursuing those thoughts, reinvest that into the mindfulness, watching the breathing. Even if your breathing becomes quite calm and subtle, it's relatively gross object. Notice the quality of your breathing to be able to compare it later when we meditate on the mind itself, which is a subtler object, requires more concentration, and therefore the breathing at that point may be even more subtle than now. Now, with this preliminary quieting of the mind, let's change the object we're focusing on away from the breathing to the mental consciousness, reminding yourself, it's not the eye consciousness I'm going to pay attention to, or the ear, nose, tongue, or body consciousness, but the mental consciousness, See if you can discern thoughts that are there, a bit quieted after our breathing meditation. Emotional states like attachment, anger. When I say emotional, afflictive states or positive states, faith, joy, so forth. Memories of the past, plans of the future, observations about the present. All of these are like clouds in an otherwise clear sky, likened to the conventional nature of our mind. It's not something you perceive directly because it's very subtle. But having done this meditation before, you may have a remembering consciousness of this, of your mental image of this conventional clear light nature of the mind. Just the very presence of thoughts, once you're trained, can remind you to induce that understanding of the mind as having no obstruction, no obstructing factor that prevents thoughts from entering the mind or leaving the mind. This is our developmental Buddha nature, which is labeled upon this conventional clear light nature of the mind. Like recognizing in the Lama meditations, like recognizing that you have a perfect human rebirth can bring such joy to the mind. Here, even more so, recognizing not only do we have this auspicious moment, this life of leisure and endowment, we, as well as all living beings, have the capacity to eliminate faults from our mind because of this nature of the mind, conventional nature of the mind. We can develop within it all of the good qualities that we might have envied others for, intelligence or good heart or generosity or whatever. The fact that we can recognize this right now and feel empowered by this is due to the fact that we have a life of leisure and endowment. The Buddha called this auspicious moment that comes so rarely in the course of numberless rebirths in cyclic existence, that we might ask ourselves, what's the purpose? What's the use of this life? Through your training in the stages of Buddhism, the stages of the path, recognizing that to spend this life simply on the pursuit of the 8 worldly dharmas, seeking pleasure of the senses, seeking wealth, seeking to be famous and loved and so forth, those are pursuits that will generate negative karma, prevent us from spending our time in the higher pursuits, seeking either liberation from cyclic existence for ourselves, or more profoundly, to seek a greater state of enlightenment. Bodhi, the the enlightenment of a Buddha, not just the enlightenment of a Shravaka or hearer, a Shravaka or a Pratika Buddha. Why would we forego seeking liberation? Because if we were to achieve nirvana for ourselves alone, we would leave behind all living beings who have been depthlessly kind to us in other lives, when they were our mothers, our friends, our companions. They've been kind to us when they were strangers, because in their pursuit of their own livelihood, they provided the infrastructure. They built roads and bridges and buildings and corporations to pay our wages. Even when they were enemies, they were kind to us in helping us to, in interaction with enemies, experience the ripening of our negative karma, our karmic debts, so to speak, as a human, rather than having to experience them in the three lower realms. All of these living beings, like us, have Buddha potential, both the conventional Buddha potential, this clear light nature, conventional clear light nature of the mind, and the ultimate Buddha potential, the emptiness of the mind. All of them have the ability to achieve enlightenment. They have the right to that. There is no one who is barred from achieving that. So to work for their benefit in the long term, to help them escape the lower realms, to be born in the upper realms continually, to, as a aid, to be able to achieve liberation or enlightenment, because it takes usually more than one lifetime. In order to lead sentient beings into enlightenment, everlasting happiness, we ourselves have to achieve that state, to know all of the stages that lead sentient beings out of their incredibly convoluted, crazy states in some cases, the hell realms, or with strong karmic imprints to do evil, to lead them sequentially out of that, maybe from the hell realms to the spirit realm, the animal realm, into human realm, to teach them the stages of the path. All of that requires our achievement of enlightenment. To do that, we need to accumulate the two collections of merit and wisdom. Merit, basically virtuous karma. Collection of wisdom, basically the experience of the realization of emptiness. In order to achieve those two collections, main work of the Bodhisattva, we need to know how to do those things, how to deal with conventional truth, with bodhicitta, how to deal with ultimate truth through the wisdom of emptiness. So we need to rely on the great treatises such as Nagarjuna's Fundamental Wisdom, Chandrakirti's commentaries on that, especially the one we're studying, the meaning commentary, the Madhyamaka Vatara. And now, as we're so distant from that time when it was composed, we need to rely even on commentaries on those texts, like Lama Tsongkhapa's Illumination of the Intent, Gompa Rapso, that we're studying. So thinking in that way, today I'm going to participate in the class, listening with a fresh mind, with discerning intellect, contemplating what is said, weighing it with reason, and when insights arise, hold it for some time with concentration, So leading to the three kinds of wisdom, the wisdom of hearing, wisdom of contemplation, wisdom of meditation, with the goal of accumulating these two collections of merit and wisdom for the sake of achieving enlightenment, for the benefit of all sentient beings. I'm going to participate today to become a perfectly complete Buddha, so that I can effortlessly, spontaneously, and without error lead sentient beings out of every suffering into everlasting blissful happiness of enlightenment. Like a carpenter determined to make a table or some beautiful work of art, with that motivation entering into the work with the wood, rather than just going to the workshop and tinkering around, seeing what happens. We have this clear intention. I'm going to participate today for this purpose, to achieve enlightenment for the benefit of all sentient beings. Okay. So bring your attention back to the present. How are we doing? Anyone have any questions from our continuity of classes you've been confused about? Shankar, are you okay? Any questions?
No, not right now. Thank you.
Okay. Stephen has his hand up. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you, Venerable George. So I'm a little bit confused about the mental factor of concentration.
Right.
So if we're looking at an object, we begin with mindfulness and keeping our attention on that object with mindfulness. And then I guess that if we're able to do that, that's when concentration comes in. And I'm looking at this book here. This is Geshe Rabten's book, The Mind and Its Functions. He says concentration is a distinct mental factor that is capable of dwelling one-pointedly, bearing the same aspect for a sustained duration of time upon a single referent. So I'm getting a little bit mixed up about the distinction between mindfulness, smriti, and concentration. When can we say one becomes the next?
Yeah. So here mainly we're talking about, although you can apply it also to the senses, because both mindfulness and the mental factor concentration. Do you know what that is in Tibetan, concentration?
Samadhi?
That's Sanskrit, yeah. Tingnazen. Yeah, in Tibetan,
Okay,
Tingnazen and Sanskrit Samadhi. So smriti, which is mindfulness, or dempa in Tibetan, and samadhi or tingnazen, they are omnipresent mental factors, right? Or not? Is samadhi an omnipresent mental factor? No? Roshio's saying, she's nodding yes.
Oh, sorry, yeah.
Is
I
it?
said no.
You said it's not it's one of the what?
Object ascertaining mental factors.
Okay.
Well, samadhi is omnipresent, right?
Stephen is thinking it's not. So just to clarify that first. Stephen, take a look at your list there of the omnipresent mental factors.
Yeah. So, well, those are feeling, discernment, intention, contact, and attention. That's in Stephen Batchelor's terminology. And then
Right.
the object ascertaining includes concentration.
Right. So mindfulness is a omnipresent mental factor, and concentration is an object ascertaining mental factor. So that means it is a mental factor that's engaged when you've come to realize something. So there is a difference. Mindfulness is simply the ability to keep your, let's say, because they're present, because they're mindfulness is a omnipresent mental factor. It's present in all the senses in addition to the mental consciousness, right? And because samadhi is an object ascertaining mental factor, it's also present in sense consciousnesses when you are realizing something, like when you're tasting something, you're tasting some special ice cream or, something good or bad. So they're both they're both possible to be in the sense consciousnesses, but when we're talking about developing in the spiritual path, we're not talking about developing samadhi in our eye or ear or our tongue and so forth. You're talking about developing the samadhi of the mental consciousness. For instance, the fully qualified samadhi, which we have now, even in casual experiences, is called shamatha, right? Calm abiding, tranquil abiding. That's not present in the five gross sense powers. Shamatha is something exclusive to the mental consciousness, right? So when you're keeping something, what helps to support the development of shamatha, so there's sequences. You have, you try to keep your mind on the object, because generally our mind moves from one thing to another very easily, is distracted because other thoughts are going into taking place in our mental consciousness. Attractive thoughts generally can distract us away from the thing that we're trying to concentrate on. So the concentration, the samadhi that we do have in the mental consciousness in a rudimentary form, it's not yet shamatha, is supported by mindfulness. Mindfulness is the state of mind that's trying to hold it in memory. And as a result of that, the mind can concentrate on it. So they're slightly different. Then as that progresses, the mental consciousness can develop the ability to let go of, okay, I'm distracted by someone's comment there. You can develop the ability to no longer need to watch the mind. You can develop the state of equanimity, where you no longer have to apply antidotes to watch the mind or to get rid of scattering, whether it be excitement or not, or sinking. And that state is called shamatha. That's only achieved within the mental consciousness. So I'm not sure, does that kind of answer your question, or?
Yeah, thank you, Venerable George. Yeah, it does. It helps with the progression. And I guess it brings up another question also from last week's teaching, that when we say concentration in English, are we always, in this context, are we always talking about meditative stabilization, or are there instances of what we would call concentration that are different from meditative stabilization?
Okay, so the term meditative stabilization, it almost, it could be applied in different ways. Generally, how we use meditative stabilization is a translation of samadhi, or single-pointed concentration. Not all samadhis are shamatha. Not all samadhis are, tranquil abiding. That's what shamatha is, a Sanskrit word. when we talk about on this fifth ground that's coming up, this is we have a special practice in the perfection of dhyana, which is even a different word, right? We've had shamatha, we have samadhi, which we have even in our elemental state now, the ability for the mind to remain on something sequential moments, which is maybe yet imperfect. We can have sort of perfected samadhi in the form of shamatha, which can lead to dhyana. Dhyana is the ability to have an even greater concentration. So dhyana generally is a kind of samadhi. It's generally higher than that. So that's what we're going to be talking about now. Okay. So let's see. Anyone else have a question, thought? How are we doing? Okay. So just as a kind of review of these and prelude to the fifth, I just wanted to remind you from the Lama Chopa Puja. At the end, there is a glance meditation on the Lan Rim. And I find the verses on the six perfections to be very, very useful. So I'm going to read a couple of them. So that one of the verses that starts with the perfection of charity says, Ludan longsho dusum gesok che, semchen rangrang dope ngugurte, chakbe tongsem pelwe menaki, jimpe bachin sokpa jingilo. So you remember from our studying of the first bhumi, where it had a special practice of the perfection of wisdom, right? So here it says, please grant me blessings at the very end of the sentence, Jingilo, or, grant me inspiration to complete the perfection of generosity, whatever you want to call it, charity, giving, by giving away our body, our possessions, and our merits of the three times, transformed into that which is wished for by each and every sentient being. So that has to do with various kinds of meditation techniques, by the oral instruction of increasing the mind of giving without attachment. How can we, that's sort of like the epitome of giving, right? To be able to give without any kind of hesitation or attachment. So how do we do that? By transforming our body, our possessions, which includes our homes and, everything, computers, money, and our merits of the three times into that which is wished for by each and every sentient being. So that involves the various meditations like in Tonglen, or in when you're reciting mantra, imagine sending out your body, your possessions, and your merits of the three times transformed into wish-fulfilling jewels, which they themselves then provide whatever people want. Friends, assistants, homes, like when people come to the king and ask, I need a sofa, I need a horse, I need a cow, I need a wife, whatever they need. The kings had the ability to provide, but here, as a teacher, even the wish-fulfilling gem becoming a teacher. So that's kind of like a nice way of sort of reviewing our study of the first four and now the fifth perfection. So the next verse says, Sotar Jangsem Sangak Dombayi Chesang Soki Chiryang Mitong Shing Kechu Dudang Semchen Dunjuk Pe Sultim Bachin Sopa Jingilo. So they all end with a request to grant me blessings to complete one of the perfections, in this case, the perfection of morality, or Shila. And here it says, grant me blessings to perfect this, to complete this perfection of morality, which achieves the welfare of sentient, which is the not forsaking any of our vows of pratimoksha, bodhisattva vows, or tantric vows, even at the sake of my life. That's the morality of abstaining from negative actions, of collecting virtuous dharma, geche du, and of achieving the welfare of sentient beings. So we talked about that in the second bhumi when we talked about the perfection of morality. In the Mahayana, morality is not simply abstaining from negative actions, but it's also accumulating virtuous dharmas, and or in one case, virtuous karmas and knowledge and so forth, and of benefiting sentient beings. And the third verse of this sequence, when you get to the perfections in that Lama Chopa, it says, Kamsum kego malu jogurte, sheshing sangju dikshing sokchokyang, mituk lonlen pempa jupchepe, sope barchin sopar jingilo. So again, grant me inspiration to complete the perfection of patience, which aims to achieve, to bring about benefit in return for the harm of sentient beings. Even if all the beings of the three realms, the Kamsum, all of the beings were to get angry with me, to threaten, to dig up my faults, even kill me, not to be disturbed by this, but to work for their benefit in response to their harm. So that's sort of like emphasizing one of the particular aspects of patience. And it can bring about, when you think about these verses, you can, and you go back over the teachings that we had about patience on the third bhumi, you can kind of see how all of those teachings fit into this scheme. So the fact that we can benefit sentient beings, work for their benefit, even when they've harmed us, depends on us having this kind of patience that is able to endure those for the sake of sentient beings. Then the next one, Semchen, so this would be the perfection of, that we just finished, the perfection of enthusiastic perseverance, or virya. Semchen rere chiryang narmepe, menang kelpa gyatso nekyong kyang, ningje migyo jangchu choksumpe, sudup barchin zopar jingilo. Grant me blessings or inspiration to complete the perfection of enthusiastic perseverance, which strives, even if I need to remain for an ocean of eons in the fire of the Avicii hells for each and every sentient being, grant me blessings to strive for supreme enlightenment without, let's say, Mikyo has different meanings, without regret, without a sense of inferiority, recognizing I can do this, out of compassion for sentient beings. So if you get a chance to recite these verses, especially of the six perfections, while we're studying the six perfections, it can bring things together. And then when you do the Lama Chopa Puja, you can actually have some very deep experience of that. And now the one that we're talking about now, the perfection of Samten or Dhyana, Shingo Nampar Yengwe Kyongpang Ne Chukun Tenpe tongpe nelukla, sechik nyampar chokpe tinzingi samten parchin sokbar jingiro. Grant me blessings, or you can say grant me inspiration to complete the perfection of dhyana. What here, what is, I can't remember what Jimpa calls this, concentration or meditation.
Meditative absorption.
He calls it meditative absorption. Is that right? In Jimpa's book? Okay. So that's dhyana. Please grant me blessings to complete that with the samadhi of meditative absorption, single-pointedly on the natural state, which is empty of inherent existence of all phenomena. That means the mode of abiding of phenomena. How they actually abide and how they appear is different generally, right? When we talk about what is truth, we talk about that which its mode of appearance and its mode of reality, its mode of abiding, how it really is, are the same. Say, for instance, when you see ordinary phenomena now, they appear to be inherently existent. That's their mode of appearance, but that does not accord with their actual mode of subsistence or their mode of abiding, how they actually exist, which is empty of inherent existence. The only thing that appears the same way that it actually exists is emptiness. It appears to be empty of inherent existence, and it is empty of inherent existence. So please grant me blessings to complete this perfection of that, having abandoned sinking, excitement, and scattering, having abandoned these faults, bless me to be able to remain single-pointedly concentrated on the natural state of all phenomena, which is that they are empty of true existence. Okay, so I just wanted to mention that so that you can take a look at those verses and use them as, to go back and review these first 4 perfections that we finished, and now we're beginning the 5th one, the perfection of dhyana. So with that, we're going to start with the 5th ground, hard to conquer in Jimpa's translation, or Jeffrey translates it difficult to overcome. So the sense it will come out why it's called that in the following section. So this section has 2 parts. Jimpa text says the etymology of the name of the 5th ground and becoming superior in meditative absorption and mastering the truths, or as Jeffrey says, surpassing concentration and skill in the truths. So the etymology of the name, which is a better translation than Jeffrey's translation of the description of the 5th ground, is actually in Tibetan means the kind of the etymology. The Great One, reading from the 5th Karaka, the first Karaka of the 5th chapter, the etymology of the name of the 5th ground. The Great One on the ground hard to conquer or difficult to overcome cannot be defeated even by the entire host of Maras. So that's the first part of that Karaka. Usually Karakas in Tibetan have 4 lines. The Sanskrit has sort of like what in Tibetan are 2 lines is 1 line. So they usually have two lines. So this is like the first part of the first Karaka. So the commentary says the Great One, that's referring to the Bodhisattva, Arya Bodhisattva, abiding on the 5th ground of the hard to conquer, the difficult to overcome. If he cannot be defeated even by the entire host of Maras, such as Devaputra, the Devaputra Mara, residing throughout the world systems, what need is there to speak of others, such as the servants of Mara under his command? Or as Jeffrey says, he cannot be, even if he cannot be defeated even by all the Devaputra demons or Maras abiding in all the realms of the world. If so, what need is there to mention that he cannot be overcome by other demons, such as the obeyers of demonic requests and servant demons? So the Tibetan here has a longer thing than Jimpa has translated. He just says, cannot be, what did he say here? The servants of Mara under his command. It's actually referring to two different things. That means those people who are sort of like his ministers, those would be the ones who are following his commands. Like, the king gives the minister some request, get taxes from that village, or, discipline these people, or distribute these goods to the poor, so forth. And then there are others that are his servants, that have to do what he says also, but in a different sense. So if he cannot be defeated by even the entire host of Maras, such as Devaputra, residing throughout the world systems, what need is there to speak of others, such as these other two kinds, the obeyers of his requests, like his ministers, and the servant demons? So what is Devaputra Mara? Does anyone know?
One of the
Is it one of the asuras?
it's one of the four Maras.
Okay, I didn't catch who said that. Okay, who's saying this? One of the four? Oh, John, yeah.
Yeah, sorry.
Shankar, you think it's one of the asuras?
That's what I was thinking, but
Okay.
of course I've been known to be wrong.
No.
The four Maras are what are they? Klesha Mara, Skanda Mara, Devaputra Mara, and Mrityu Mara.
So if you look in your text, the Jimpa has note 274. So this is very common. He says, in Buddhist scriptures, four principal maras or obstructive forces hinder one's path to enlightenment. So sometimes the begging bowl of the Buddha, when we visualize Buddha in front, is said to have nectar that overcomes the four maras. Sometimes they even say five maras. So what this means, the Devaputra Mara, I don't think Chimpa is correct here. He says the Mara of attachment personified here as Devaputra, son of the gods. There is actually a physical being of the god realm, Devaputra Mara, who can appear in the world when people are practicing virtue, to try to dissuade them from doing that. So it depends on the time. In the god realms, Indra and the king of the gods there, in good times takes on beneficent aspects, and in bad times acts as depending on their own karma, offended when people practice virtue. He wants to be superior, wants them to remain below. So there is an actual Devaputra Mara. Say, for instance, when Buddha was seated under the Bodhi tree in Bodh Gaya on the evening before he achieved enlightenment, upon which he achieved enlightenment the next morning, took the aspect of doing this. He was tempted by the Devaputra Mara, who came down and first emanated many attractive women to try to, cause the Buddha to be distracted from his meditation. And when that didn't work, he sent out legions of, kind of like in these what is it called, the trilogy of the the evil king sending out these minions of people to attack with all sorts of weapons. The Buddha was able to overcome them all through compassion and wisdom and so forth. So that's called the Devaputra Mara. Then there's as Jinpa's note on note 274 says, the Mara of the afflictions. That means the Klesha Mara. So that means that's not all the Maras, the demons that can affect us are external. There are some cases, but generally the main Mara is our own afflictions, that which prevents us, kind of the demon is our own self-interest, our own attachment, our own pride and anger and so forth. These are things that prevent us from practicing. So to overcome the inner Mara of the afflictions is to be able to tame the Mara of the afflictions. The third one is called the Mara of the aggregates. Jinpa adds here, psychophysical, as though we don't, we're not aware of the fact that the five aggregates includes one that's physical, the form aggregate, and the other four of the aggregates are mind, mental. So that provides, those are Maras for us, because like me, I'm getting old. My form aggregates are degenerating, and my mental aggregates are becoming less acute and so forth. So they become problematic for us. It's called the Mara of the aggregates. And then the Mara personified as the Lord of Death. In this case, that is a kind of personification. He used in the first one, the Mara of attachment personified here as Devaputra. There is an actual physical Devaputra, but when we talk about death, this is something that will come to all of us, and that's something that we have to deal with. So that's called the Mara of death. Now, let's see what he says here. A key aspect of these forces is to tempt us away from the path and toward more negative tendencies and impulses through distraction and heedlessness. The language of the Maras clearly aims to resonate with the life story of the historical Buddha, who countered the forces of Mara with his meditation on loving kindness and his meditation on wisdom, right? So, the great one abiding the fifth ground of hard to conquer, if he cannot be defeated even by the entire host of Maras, such as the Devaputra Mara residing throughout the world systems, what need is there to speak of others, such as the servants of Mara under his command? Therefore, this ground is called hard to conquer or difficult to overcome. So this is explaining the etymology, why it's called this term. He cannot be conquered by or overcome by any kind of other external or internal forces. His mind or her mind has reached the point where they're able to deal with outer obstacles, cannot be defeated by them at all, and by inner obstacles of the klesha, the aggregates, or death itself. Okay, so there's a quotation here from the Precious Garland. Let's see. It says, the fifth is hard to conquer, or there's an extra adjective in the Sanskrit, the extremely difficult to overcome, or the extremely hard to conquer, because it's so hard for the Maras to subdue it. Here, mastery and understanding arises on the subtle points of the Arya truths and so on. He becomes skilled in knowing the subtle meanings of the noble truths and so forth, Jeffrey says. So this is one of the factors here. Earlier, when we talked about the fourth bhumi, here, this is the fifth bhumi, right? When we talked about the fourth bhumi, there was a special practice of enthusiastic perseverance, but he also had a special dawning of wisdom that was able to deal with what? Do you remember? KT, do you remember? There was a kind of wisdom there. You don't remember? Or are you trying to? Go ahead.
Sorry, couldn't unmute. Oh, sorry, it's at the tip of my mind. And
Okay. Mikhail,
this one was the noble truths are coming into this one.
Yeah.
I know that. We're coming out of I'm sorry.
Yeah. Mikhail, do you remember? What?
The 37 practices
Yes,
Yeah.
yeah.
of
So
enlightenment.
that was there was a special wisdom that was able to understand and practice those especially. Now there's a wisdom of the Four Noble Truths and their, the 16 aspects and other things like that. On the next ground, on the sixth ground, the wisdom is one skilled in the 12 links of dependent arising and so forth, besides being the sixth ground that realizes, that has special practice of the perfection of wisdom in general. Each of these three grounds had a gradation of increasing kind of wisdom. So this is here mastery arises, or skill arises, knowing the subtle meanings of the noble truths. So why are they called noble truths? Do you know, Karen? Just out of curiosity. Are they some kind, like?
I was typing notes.
Oh, you're thinking.
Well, they're called. It was the Buddha's first teaching of the will of dharmas, so that we would understand suffering. That there is suffering,
Right.
that will be overcome by following the path.
Right. But I'm saying, why are they called noble truths? Are they like, like only the nobility can? They're why are they called noble or Arya? Do you know Pranav? You don't know. Okay.
No, Venerable, I do not.
Roshio knows.
I think it's because it's the truths realized by the Aryas. Like once you understand those four truths, you become Arya.
Yeah, you can say it like this. They are truths that ordinary people don't realize. We may have understanding of them, but when you become an Arya being and you see reality directly, generally the object of meditation of the Arya path, on the path of seeing, what are you meditating on? Are you just meditating on emptiness? You're meditating on the Four Noble Truths that sort of came up earlier also. We've talked about it in other cases. It's not as though the Four Noble Truths is just for beginners and you just meditate on emptiness, on shunyata. You meditate on the emptiness of the Four Noble Truths, which helps you to overcome all of your afflictions, let's say on the path of seeing, that are intellectually formed. And then later on the afflictions of the desire, form, and formless realms that are innate, by meditating on the emptiness of the Four Noble Truths. So they're called noble or Arya truths. The actual word is Arya truths. They're truth for an Arya. They're not truth for us. An Arya has seen emptiness directly. So these four truths, the truth of suffering, the truth of the origination of suffering, the truth of the cessation of suffering, and the truth of the path that leads to cessation, we call the four noble truths, those are realized directly by the Aryas. So they're called, you could say, truth for the Aryas, or Arya truths, or noble truths. So it's not as though they're somehow enshrined in the sky as noble. We have to look up to them in some way because they're higher status than us. So then the second verse of this citation from the Precious Garland, the next verse says, as for its ripening effects, or we can say maturation effect that's being experienced here. This bodhisattva will be the king of the Tushita gods. What are the Tushita gods? Does anyone know? Don, do you know the Tushita gods?
I don't.
Aren't they the gods, the gods of the formless realm, but not or like form and formless realm, but not the whatever the no, totally wrong.
No. Tushita gods are just like the previous gods that the bodhisattva on the first bhumi, the second bhumi, the third bhumi, the fourth bhumi, they had the karma to be born as the god, the king of the gods of those realms. Tushita is also of the desire realm. But isn't Maitreya Buddha ensconced in Tushita? Wasn't Shakyamuni Buddha the throne holder of Tushita before he came to earth? What's the difference? Is that the same Tushita? Mikhail, do you know? Huh? Richard, do you know? Oh, sorry. Yeah.
But that's a pure realm, right?
Okay, so the Tushita that's talked about where Maitreya is and where Shakyamuni Buddha was before he came to earth is a pure realm at the same level of the desire realm. It's likened to, so it has the same name. That realm of the desire realm is called Tushita, or Tushita means joyous, the joyous land, Ganden, which is also the name of Lama Tsongkhapa's monastery, right? The first monastery that Lama Tsongkhapa created in Tibet, the only one that he created by himself, was called Ganden, which is the joyous, having joy, which in Sanskrit would be Tushita. So it was like a great place to be, right? Sort of like a Pure Land, that Ganden monastery that still exists now as one of the three main Gelugpa monasteries, right? Sera, Drepung, and Ganden. So Ganden is the Tibetan, Tushita is the Sanskrit, and the Tushita Pure Land is kind of like a suburb, it says in the scriptures, of the Tushita of the desire realm gods. So it's on that same level, but kind of like, outside, maybe you could say kind of like a gated community. What do you think, Paul? You can't get.
That was the phrase that was coming to my mind.
You can't get into Tushita Pure Land simply being on having been born in the Tushita desire realm gods, unless you're an Arya being. Okay, so here his what do I say? For its ripening effect, he will be born. He will be a king of the Tushita gods, or as Jeffrey says, a king of the gods abiding in the joyous land. He undoes the contents of the afflicted views. Undoes. I'm not sure why he translates that way. He overcomes the sources of the afflictions. When he says the contents, so the Tibetan says Nyonmong Tane Dokchepa. Dok means you could say overcome, or I can't remember what Jimpa translated it as, undoes. The Nyonmong Tane. Ta means views, and ne can mean source. So the source of those views, he overcomes or undoes the source of the afflicted views. So there are different kinds of views, right? There are some views are, what's the difference between afflicted views and non-afflicted views? Richard, do you know?
the source of afflicted views.
What's the difference between non-afflicted views and afflicted views? What are the afflicted views?
I assume what ignorance, attachment. I'm not sure I understand the question.
No, those are afflictions. So just a reminder, we've mentioned this many times, but sometimes they hear it in context again. There are 6 root afflictions. There are 5 that are non-views, which are the ones you're thinking of: ignorance, attachment, anger, pride, and afflicted doubt. Those are called the 5 non-views, afflicted non-views. And then there are 5 afflicted views, which is the view of the transitory collection and the view of wrong morality as supreme and so forth. The 5 afflicted views. So that's what's talked about here. He undoes or overcomes the source of these 5 afflicted views, which are, he says, Jimpa says, crafted by all proponents of extremes. Probably better to say the views of the forwarders. So the Tirthakas. Have you heard that term before? Anyone?
Yeah.
Have you heard that term, Tirthakas?
Yeah.
Huh? John Campbell, do you know what Tirthakas are? You have to unmute to be able to say. There you go.
Yes, the mutekpas. Forgers, it means not, well, usually in this context would mean a non-Buddhist view.
Right. So the Buddhist name for non-Buddhists are Tirthakas. In Tibetan, we say mutekpa. And the etymology is that from the Buddhist point of view, they're propounding views that forward, that lead to a state which doesn't lead to liberation. So generally, they're what are called non-Buddhists. So here it's, as Jimpa says, he undoes the contents of the afflicted views crafted by all proponents of extremes, but the Tibetan has mutek chepa tamche ki nyongmon tane dokchepa. So that's not too bad. So he overcomes the afflicted views, which are of all of the mutekpa, of all the Tirthakas. So I think Jeffries puts it as 2 separate things. I think Jimpa in this case has a better translation. Jeffries said he overcomes the source of the afflictions and of the views of the forwarders, but it's the afflicted views, the source of the afflicted views of the forwarders. So that's from Nagarjuna's Precious Garland, which generally Chandrakirti quoted in his Madhyamaka Vatara and in its Bhasham, right? But here, this is added by Lama Tsong to explain kind of the etymology why they're called hard to overcome. So the next section, becoming superior in meditative absorption and mastering the truths, or as Jeffrey says, surpassing concentration and skill in the truths. So the next verse, the second part of the first stanza of the 5th bhumi. And the 5th bhumi is very short. It just has two stanzas, two karikas. Excelling in meditative absorption and in the truths of the wise, he gains mastery in refined understanding as well. Or as Jeffrey says, his concentration exceeds. So what are we having here? Here it says samten lakching. So samten is this dhyana. So it's not so much Jeffrey's translating dhyana, which is the perfection that has the special practice here. It's just concentration. Jimpa's translating it as meditative absorption. So it's kind of a general term that includes all of these qualities. His concentration or dhyana excels, and he gains great skill in knowledge of the subtle nature of the truths of those with a good mind. So those with a good mind is what is the Sanskrit sumati. You've heard of sumati before, right? Who's Sumati Kirti, Paul? Do you know?
Yeah, Sumati Kirti is Tsong Khapa.
Yeah, that was his ordination name, Losang Drakpa. Losang, good mind, is Sumati. Kirti is Drakpa, famous. So when you hear Lama Tsongkhapa, Losang Drakpa, it was his ordination name. So that's Sumati Kirti. Sumati means those with good mind. So here Sumati is being used, those with a good mind, or what is Jimpa says, truths of the wise. That's referring to the Aryas. They have this excellent mind. So he has the fifth Bhumi Bodhisattva has a special ability of dhyana, which we're going to be going over, and is especially skilled in the subtle natures, not knowing the subtle natures of the Four Noble Truths, which is just paraphrased sort of poetically here, the truths of those with a good mind, or the truths of the Sumati. Shankar, what are you thinking?
Yes. So this actually, this goes back to when you were talking about the prayer from the Lama Chopa, right?
Mm-hmm.
In there, you said, it's I seek your blessings to complete the perfection of firm contemplation through the samadhi of single pointed placement upon the nature of reality of phenomena, etc. Right?
Right.
So single pointed placement is the meditative absorption we are talking about, right? Or concentration. Is that correct?
Right. So here in the Tibetan of that Lama Chopa verse, it says Sechik Nyampar Jokpe Tinzingi. So that it does use the word samadhi or meditative stabilization, which is a absorption, a single pointed absorption. So that means a fully qualified, not just ordinary samadhi, not just, let's say, not just, the ordinary vipassana, but it is single-pointedly placed on the meaning of reality, the natural state of all phenomena, which is the fact that they are empty of true existence.
But I guess my question is, why does it say through the samadhi of whatever, right? Because samadhi is not, because we've been talking about samadhi as, the not meditative absorption, but of mindfulness, right? That samadhi is...
No. Samadhi has a whole sequence. So samadhi exists even in our eye and nose and ear consciousnesses now, and in our mental consciousness now as ordinary beings, even dogs and cats. Devaputra Mara has some samadhi, the ability for the mind to remain on something for more than one thought instant. That's samadhi. But when you perfect samadhi, that's when you've developed, first of all, shamatha, and as a result of that, adding union with vipassana, you're able to achieve the dhyanas, the meditative states of the first form realm, the second form realm, third, fourth, and then of the formless realms. So it's those particular kinds of samadhis. They are samadhis, but they are more sublime samadhis that are used for the bodhisattva to meditate on emptiness. The bodhisattva doesn't use generally a desire realm mind to meditate on emptiness, to meditate, in meditative equipoise and realizing emptiness. they use either the preparation to the first concentration or the first concentration itself or the second concentration, dhyana, or as Jimpa says here, meditative absorption.
Got it. Okay, I understand now. Thank you.
Okay, good. No, we're clearing up, getting everything more clarified here. So I say, Sean, what do you think?
I was just wondering, you had mentioned both samadhi and mindfulness being omnipresent.
No. We said mindfulness was an ever-present mental factor, omnipresent mental factor, but samadhi was what is among the 5 object ascertaining mental factors. So that object ascertaining mental factors are those that are only present when you've realized something. When you, like, say, for instance, if I'm looking at a tree with my eye consciousness, mindfulness is always in the eye consciousness, it's omnipresent. But if I actually have an impression of the tree with my eye consciousness for more than one instant, and I have which is necessary in order to realize that eye consciousness, for that eye consciousness to realize the tree, you need to have samadhi. But here, samadhi, we're talking about in a more sublime form. We're talking about the samadhi of the mental consciousness, which is also present with us now. Beyond that, the samadhi which is reached tranquil abiding, so it's able to remain on something without any hindrance for a long period of time, and then to be absorbed in that totally, as though separated from the desire realm minds. So that's the kind of samadhi we're talking about here. So for instance, there's this famous sutra called the Samadhi Raja Sutra. Has anyone heard of the Samadhi Raja?
Yes, the King of Concentration Sutras.
Yeah,
right?
if you call samadhi concentration, yeah. So in there are many kinds of samadhis that are mentioned, and in the Prajnaparamita Sutras, there are many kinds of samadhis that the Bodhisattvas have. But in that context, they are very special kind of samadhis, not like the kind of samadhi that we have now. Even when we develop shamatha, they have particular kinds of qualities and so forth. They're different names, and we'll encounter them, I think, in the 6th chapter.
Well, my question was, like, how do we use the term lacking mindfulness if mindfulness is omnipresent?
Well, yeah, omnipresent mental factor. So the fact that we are able to, so mindfulness is omnipresent, but it is not, it can be lost very quickly, right? It might just last a couple of mind instants. What we need to be able to do is to extend our mindfulness so that there is a continuity of keeping something in mind for a long enough period of time that then the mental factor samadhi can be activated and hold it in mind. Mindfulness acts as a support of samadhi. So the terminology omnipresent mental factor means that mindfulness is present whenever there is a consciousness, but it doesn't necessarily have to be excelling or excellent mindfulness. Right now, if I ask you, this famous test that Trump took, remember he was bragging about, what was it? Anyone remember?
The physical he had with that doctor, right?
Yeah,
it's man, woman, camera.
Okay, wait, Paul's got it. Paul, what was it?
It was man, woman, See, now I've forgotten. I
TV.
remembered it.
Camera.
Table camera.
Camera, yeah.
Okay, so we can keep in mind for a short time, but to keep that in mind for a longer period of time means that that mindfulness has to be improved. And mindfulness is sometimes a measure of one's mental acuity. So those kind of tests are given, first of all, if you're getting senile, to see if you completely can't remember from, a couple of seconds ago. I find difficult some of those tests myself, so keeping in mind. Okay, let's go on. Let's go on a little bit further. So on this fifth ground, among the 10 perfections, remember it's not just 6 perfections. After the 6th bhumi, on the 7th, 8th, 9th, and 10th bhumis, there are 4 more perfections. So we come to say 10 perfections, not just 6. On this 5th ground, among the 10 perfections, it is the perfection of dhyana, if you want to call meditative absorption, or of concentration, or whatever, however you want to translate it, that one comes to excel in, or is greatly surpassing, Jeffrey likes to say. Seeing as the bodhisattva had previously become superior in the first 4 perfections, remember, he had a special practice of generosity and morality, patience and enthusiastic perseverance on the first 4 grounds. He had previously become superior in the first 4 perfections on those 4 grounds, generosity to diligence. It is easily understood that the point of reference here must come from among the remaining 6 perfections. So that means of the 10 perfections, now, because the other ones, he had special practice of them earlier, now it's the perfection of dhyana. This is to say, the bodhisattva has attained on this ground a level of absorption that can never be trodden upon by such opposing forces as distraction, and this extent of mastery is lacking for the perfection of wisdom and the rest. So what does that mean? He doesn't have this special practice of the perfection of wisdom yet. That will come on this sixth bhumi. He does have wisdom and special kinds of wisdom, but not like the perfection of the surpassing practice of the perfection of wisdom on the 6th ground. But he does have a special practice here. As Jeffrey says, here on the 5th ground, a bodhisattva has a measure of attainment with respect to complete non-oppression by faults, which are discordant with the perfection of concentration. What kind of faults are those? Like in the verse that I read you from Lama Chopa before, here it said, Chigo Nampar Yengwe Kyong Pang Ne, having abandoned the faults of sinking, Jingwa. Gupa means excitement. Those are the general 2 main faults. And then he also adds Nampar Yengwa, which means distractions. So those are the kinds of faults that are being referred to here, that are discordant or that are contradictory or problematic for the perfection of concentration, for the perfection of dhyana, such as distraction. So there are various faults that we talk about when you try to develop concentration. Okay, so that's pretty simple, right? Does that make sense to everyone? Anyone having a problem? Okay. Oh, William? Or are you just moving your camera?
Since concentration is caused by a previous moment of concentration, it has to be eternal, no matter what else. Right?
What? Huh? I'm not quite sure what you mean. Because concentration, what?
Consciousness is caused by a previous moment of consciousness.
Okay, I thought you said concentration.
Or it has to be inherent and eternal.
No, consciousness is not inherent.
No,
It depends on what you mean by inherent. Inherently, it's not inherently existent.
no, I didn't say that.
You said it was inherent.
It's inherent, meaning that it's always present, omnipresent, maybe.
Okay, yeah. You have to be. We have to sort of decide on the usage of words. So here, when we're talking about inherent existence, that's generally means something which has a natural existence, inherent existence, which is not actually the case. Phenomena do not have inherent existence. Okay, so the consciousness is consciousness.
The question was that consciousness is caused. The theory is that the consciousness is caused by a previous moment of consciousness. Therefore, that extends indefinitely backward and theoretically indefinitely forward.
Right.
Therefore, it has to be an inherent. I called it inherent. I'm sorry, that's
Okay.
wrong. It has to be. What did we say that?
Eternal is a better choice.
Eternal. There you
go. Rather than inherent. So
just
consciousness. Consciousness is both eternal and impermanent. For some people, eternal sounds like permanent. Eternal just means it's existed in the past, it exists in the present, will exist in the future. It doesn't mean that it's permanent. It's changing moment by moment. And just as William pointed out, one moment of consciousness is the consequence or the result of the previous moment of consciousness. Okay, good. Okay. So the text continues. Not only does the bodhisattva become superior in meditative absorption or dhyana, he or she also gains mastery in refined understanding of the nature or the essence of the truths of the wise. In other words, the Arya, the wise here is or Sumati is referring to the Arya beings. Understanding that requires comprehension through refined intellect. So what does that mean? Hopkins translates it, but also he or she attains great skill with respect to the subtle nature of the truths of those with good mind, the Sumatis, the truth of the superiors, the Four Noble Truths, which must be understood with a fine mind. Okay. Hence, or therefore, here he becomes endowed with superior wisdom, versed in the coarse and subtle aspect of the truths, the Four Noble Truths. Okay, well together? Okay. So now there's a quotation or a citation from the Dashabhumika, the 10 Ground Sutra, the Sutra of the 10 Grounds, that says, the fifth ground bodhisattva comes to be versed in the Four Noble Truths of suffering, its origin, or the origination of suffering, cessation. What does cessation mean? It always goes back to suffering. Cessation of suffering, and path means the path that leads to the cessation of suffering. So this quotation from the Dashabhumika then raises the question of how there can be four truths distinct from the two truths when it is clearly stated in the meaning the meeting of Father and Son Sutra, as well as in Nagarjuna's fundamental wisdom, that the number of truths is exhausted within the divisions of two truths. Did you follow that, Nadine? Does that make sense to you? It's a question, right? Where's David? David, does it make sense to you? So the meeting of the Father and Son Sutra, which we're going to talk about, as well as quotations in fundamental wisdom. So meeting of Father and Son Sutra is the sutra that's taught by the Buddha, right? Fundamental wisdom was taught by Nagarjuna. So you're talking about sutras and shastras. commentaries. But everyone says that there are only two truths, that the truths are exhausted in the two truths. There's no other truths to be found. So how can we talk about Four Noble Truths, David? What do you think?
Well, aren't the Four Noble Truths just talking about the two truths?
Yeah.
Subdivide.
You might say the Four Noble Truths are instances of the two truths. Like, say, for instance, the truth of cessation, the third noble truth, is, from the Prasangika point of view, an ultimate truth. We're going to go into detail about that. The three other truths, the truth of suffering, the truth of the origin of suffering, you could say the cause of suffering, and the path that leads to cessation, those are all conventional truths. So there's not going to be any contradiction. So first of all, what is the meaning of the Father and Son Sutra? Anna, do you know, did you ever hear of that before? Meeting of the Father and Son Sutra? You heard the name maybe, but anyone know? Doris, have you heard the Father and Son Sutra? Which father and what son are meeting there? John, do you know?
Well, sorry, it's Nagarjuna and Aryadeva, except that that's not Shastra. So I don't know.
This is a sutra. Yeah.
I don't know for the father and son there. I'm not sure.
Oh, wow. Okay. Richard, do you know anyone? Oh, Shanka knows.
Well,
I think Nadine knows, but Shanka.
I think I know. Compassion and wisdom, right? Mother. No, that's
mother.
and father.
What father and what son are meeting in the father and son meeting of the father?
When the Buddha meets his son and ordains him.
No. Close, Nadine.
How can we know? Because it's not translated into English.
How can we know? You have to have heard some other teachings. It's like the Bodhisattvas, when the Buddha gave discourses, he talked about various things, and they were able to understand that because of their great store of knowledge, of hearing of other things. Paul, do you know? Oh, Rocio, do you know?
Isn't it like the Buddhas are the sons of the Bodhisattvas and Buddhas? I don't know which one goes first.
Anyone have? Okay. So it's this instance when the Buddha met his father after he'd achieved enlightenment. He went back to Kapilavastu and met Papa. So the father there is the king, who was the Buddha's father, still alive, and the son is Shakyamuni. And so they have discourse. The Buddha teaches his father various things, and then the father, when his intellect, his understanding becomes better, he proposes various things that the Buddha agrees with, and so forth. So that is the kind of the background of the meeting of the Father and Son Sutra. So the father is not Buddha. The Buddha, Shakyamuni, is the son, and the father was the king that was, his birth father of this lifetime. So that's very, very famous sutra, which, from my understanding, there's no translation of the whole sutra in English, which I'm really surprised. Maybe Paul can search in with his vast skills. There might have been some sections. In fact, we're going to have a couple of quotations from it that I've brought up for us. So in that sutra, there is a famous quotation. So it says, one way of translating it: without depending on others, the knower of the world, that's an epithet for the Buddha, right, taught these two truths, conventional and likewise the ultimate. A third truth does not exist. Okay, so there's a very famous quotation from the meeting of the Father and Son Sutra. Yeah, so we're gonna talk a little bit more about that. And then in Nagarjuna's fundamental wisdom, there's the famous stanzas. Doctrines taught by the Buddha rely wholly on the two truths: worldly, conventional truths and ultimate truths. So two truths: conventional truths, ultimate truths. The conventional truths are also called worldly truths, truths for the world, or as I like to remind people, that Jeffrey's slang for that, truths for a jerk, right? Those, and then the next stanza, this is the 8th and 9th stanza of the 24th chapter of Fundamental Wisdom. Those who do not comprehend the difference between these two truths do not know the nature of the profound doctrine of the Buddha. So those are the stanzas that are being cited here, although Lama Tsongkhapa doesn't explain which stanzas he's talking about. That's what's being referred to here. So let me read a little section from Jeffrey Hopkins' Meditation on Emptiness. This is in reference to a question that William, where's William? Is he still here? Oh, there he is. That brought up last time when I was asking him, does emptiness exist? And he said, no, it didn't, and so forth. And he didn't understand why I was pressing him on this. So let me read this. This is from starting on page 405 in Jeffrey Hopkins' Meditation on Emptiness. There are many other places you can find a similar exposition, but this is quite clear. The two truths, okay, that's what we're talking about here, right? The two truths. Why are we talking about the two truths? Because on the 5th bhumi, the Bodhisattva has special expertise in the Four Noble Truths, and then the question arises, but how can there be 4 truths if there are only 2 truths? So here, that's the context. The two truths are objects, the objects of mind, right? Not vague concepts of truth, beauty, and so forth. They are phenomena, or dharmas. In Tibetan, we say chu, right? They are objects, like when we talk about that which is, we talk about subjects and objects. They're objects that are to be perceived by the mind. They are existence. So they exist. The two truths both exist. And they are objects of knowledge. That which, in Tibetan we say sheja, that which is to be known. Truths are those things that exist in the way they appear, and thus only ultimate truths or emptinesses actually qualify as truths. We talk about the two truths, but the conventional truth is not actually true. Why is that? Because conventional phenomena appear to be inherently existent. Their mode of appearance and their mode of existing or abiding or their natural state does not in accordance with that. My famous example of William walking down the steps dressed as Santa Claus. His mode of appearance is Santa Claus, but his mode of existence is as William Kamen. Okay, so that's not an actual truth, but we say there are two truths. The other various and sundry objects do not exist the way they appear, except to Buddhas. Only emptiness exists the way that it appears. These objects are truths only for a concealer of suchness, or an ignorant mind, or a truth for a concealer, or a truth for a jerk. An ignorant consciousness. They're only truths for an ignorant consciousness. Therefore, they are called truths for a concealer. The general term, and we'll talk about this in the 6th bhumi, there are two kinds of truths which are called, truth is satya in Sanskrit. Is that right? In Hindi, do you say the same thing? In Pranav, in Hindi, do you say satya or you say sat or what?
Both, Venerable. Satya is more classic Hindi, and Sach is the everyday used term.
Yeah,
But in Bengali, you still say Shotto, which is Satya.
okay, good. So satya is a word for truth. So we have two kinds of satya. We have samvritti satya and parama satya. Samvritti satya is what we translate as conventional truth, or truth for a concealer, or relative truth. So in the sixth bhumi, there will be more discussion about, there are three different ways you can translate samvritti, meaning for a concealer, for a relative, or conventional. So right now here it says, what do we say here? Therefore, they are called, conventional truths are called truths for a concealer, and or we say kunsob denpa. Truths for a concealer, that means conventional truths. They're not actually true because they appear to be inherently existent, but they're not. But they still, the world accepts them as true. You know, you go to the market, you pay true money for your mangoes or something like that. For the world, they are truths, but they're not actually true. Truths for a concealer, conventional truths, are falsities, appearing one way and existing another. Thus, since only an ultimate truth can actually sustain the meaning of truth, it is not truths that are divided into the two truths. It's not as though there are two, that truths can be divided into conventional truths and ultimate truths, because only ultimate truth can actually sustain the meaning of truth. It is not that it is not truths that are divided into the two truths. Objects of knowledge or phenomena are the basis of division into the two truths. The meeting of the Father and Son Sutra, says objects of knowledge are exhausted in the two truths. So it says, when you look about objects of knowledge, that's the division, that's the basis for dividing into the two truths. It's not as though truths themselves are divided into conventional and ultimate. It's that objects of knowledge are divided into the true truths. Does that make sense? You have to think about that for a while.
Are you saying then that the Four Noble Truths, that three of the Four Noble Truths are objects of knowledge and not actually truths?
Right. They're not ultimate truths. They're objects of knowledge.
Okay.
If they're objects of knowledge and they're not ultimate truths, they have to be conventional truths.
Then if they're not truths, why are they called truths? I don't understand at all. I'm sorry.
You do understand.
I do understand. I don't understand why there is a distinction made between truths and not true, and things that are truths are called not truths in certain situations. I just don't understand why all the terminology is being used.
Let's unravel this knot. So they are called truths for the world. Like I'm joking. I hope William doesn't mind me calling him Santa Claus. So for the kids sitting at the bottom of the steps, looking at Santa Claus walking down the steps, Santa Claus is true. They're jumping up and down, but for the adults, you could say William as Santa Claus is truth for a child, or in this case, we'd say truth for an ignorant consciousness, truth for a concealer, truth for a jerk. Not to call the kids jerks. So objects of knowledge that are not ultimate truths are called truths in the sense that they are truth for the world, ordinary beings, myself typing in my computer, or a mechanic fixing the car, or a logger cutting down a tree, or a nurse helping the patients. All of those things that they perceive, they say are true. It's true that the insulin level went down. It's true that this person owes money. But those are truths only for an ignorant consciousness that is not realizing emptiness, because all of those things are predicated upon the appearance to the mind of those things as being inherently existent. So they're not actually, from the Prasangika point of view, truths. Truths are those things that their mode of existing accords with their mode of appearing. How they appear is how they actually exist.
So in order to simplify all the terminology, why continue to use the word truths for the three noble truths that are called for the three objects of knowledge that are now called the three noble truths? Why do that? Why not just simply call them three objects of knowledge and one noble truth? I don't understand why one needs to complicate things by using truth in so many different ways.
Oh, good. It's a big knot here. I like it when there are knots. K-N-O-T-S. I mean, not N-O-T-S.
Yes, I got it.
Yeah, I like that, because in extricating, unraveling that knot, there will be an indelible imprint in your mind later as you study these things, what's being talked about. So generally in the world, when you don't talk about philosophy, Buddhist philosophy or so forth, people say some things are true, some things are not true. It is true that the sun rises in the east and sets in the west. Even about things in the world, though, there are people that dispute about that, whether the last election was stolen or not, in the United States. But generally, people agree about certain truths in the world, worldly people. That's the extent. They're not talking about whether things exist inherently or not. So that's why the Buddha, in being able to, teach the general path, before talking about emptiness, you have to talk about things that for the world are true, like say, for instance, that actions that are virtuous will have pleasant results. That's conventionally true. That's true for the world. And you say, why is it not called, from the Prasangika point of view, why is that not called an actual truth? Because understanding actions and their results are all within the realm of their appearing to the consciousness as being inherently existent. Like, for instance, in our dedication at the end of our class, when we do a conventional dedication, may these, due to these virtues, may I become a Buddha, benefit sentient beings, and so forth. Then that's just conventional, because those things are still appearing to our mind as inherently existent. Then we seal that dedication in the emptiness of the three spheres, right? The virtues or the merits are not inherently existent. The goals dedicated to, although they appear to our mind as inherently existent, they themselves do not exist inherently. There's no inherently existent Buddha and so forth, or Buddhahood. And the act of dedication, we actively think, I'm dedicating, I'm really dedicating, I did a good dedication, strong motivation. That is just a name that we give to that process. It can't be found anywhere. It's not inherently existent. But those things that are truth for the world are still revered. And in the Prasangika, it's said that one cannot discount the truth, the conventionalities of the world. So we'll go into that more in the sixth Bhumi. But here, this is a little bit of an introduction. Before I go any further, William, you've patiently held your hand up. Your arm must be tired by now.
Yes. You asked just a little something from Santa. You asked whether I believed that emptiness existed. So you used the word emptiness. When one realizes emptiness, there is no word.
Okay, good observation. Okay, let me continue reading. Okay.
Well, that doesn't mean anything.
It doesn't mean anything. It does mean something. It has a referent object. We can, in fact, you can't realize emptiness without relying on words. So you have to, the Buddha said you had to rely on, no, you don't say that? The Buddha said you had to rely on conventional truths in order to realize ultimate truth. So you have to rely on words and concepts and things. Let me go a little bit further. Since these are divided into the two truths, since those which are divided into the truths are phenomena. It is phenomena that are divided into the two truths, not truths that are divided into the two truths, as well as the synonyms of phenomena. Each member of either division is a phenomenon, right? Conventional truths and ultimate truths are both phenomena. They are objects to be known. An object, an existent, an object of knowledge. This means that an emptiness is a phenomenon. It is an object, it is existent, and an object of knowledge, as are all the other various objects. This is talking about a situation in the text that's talking about different discussions about the two truths of other scholars. So this may not immediately resonate with you. Among the 6 positions on the topic of what is divided into the two truths, so Prasangika position is that objects of knowledge are divided into the two truths. Some people might say truths are divided into the two truths, which is wrong. Among the 6 positions, which were refuted by Jangyang Shepa, is the position of the translator Ngok. So we earlier ran across Lok Natsoa, right? The translator of the Madhyamaka Vatara, that in some cases Lama Tsongkhapa preferred his translations. So he was very knowledgeable, and Lama Tsongkhapa praised him for his translations in some case, but he himself had some points of view about emptiness that Lama Tsongkhapa would refute. So here, one of the positions that's refuted by Jamyang Shepa is that of the translator Ngok Natsoa, and his followers. If you want to read this, this is on page 405 in Jeffrey Hopkins' Meditation on Emptiness. These followers of Ngok and his followers do not accept that emptiness is an object of knowledge. This is why I was pressing William last time. He thought maybe I was being really cruel to him. They don't accept that emptiness is an object of knowledge. It can't be known because the mere non-finding of an object under analysis for them is just called emptiness. And thus there is no phenomenon emptiness existent there. Emptiness does not exist. That's what I was pressing William on. Noak's idea is that if an analytical consciousness were to realize emptiness, cognize emptiness, then that emptiness would necessarily inherently exist.
Right.
Yeah, so you're a follower of Ngok
No, no.
It's okay. Noak's a great guy.
The
I'm just
emptiness.
teasing. Okay, no, leave it. Just teasing.
You won't listen. Okay.
I will listen. I just don't want to take a lot of time right now. You write me later. I'm just teasing you, William. Maybe I shouldn't tease you. I'll stop.
It's at your own peril, George.
My own what? My own peril. Okay.
Well, of course, any time you disregard other people, it's at your own peril. You know that. The emptiness of emptiness means that there's always an object associated with emptiness. So there is no emptiness per se.
Right, but emptiness does exist. Okay, let me read you further. Noak's idea is
It's
that
what you experience. It's what you experience at the realization of emptiness. Of course, it exists.
okay,
It's an experience.
okay.
Okay, I'm sorry to bother you.
Okay, that's okay. Noak's idea is that if an analytical consciousness, you're analyzing phenomena, were to realize emptiness or cognize emptiness, then that emptiness would necessarily inherently exist. For an analytical consciousness is searching to find whether an object inherently exists or not. And if it finds or cognizes an emptiness of inherent existence of that object, then it would seem that the emptiness must inherently exist because, according to him, according to Noak, it would be able to bear ultimate analysis. Therefore, according to him, according to Noak, mere appearances are the basis of division of the true truths and not objects of knowledge, because an ultimate truth, that is an emptiness, is not an object of knowledge. Okay, so I'm gonna, there's more, but you could read if you like in Jeffrey Hopkins' Meditation on Emptiness. Maybe I'll post a PDF of this section on the group page if you'd like to. If you don't have the book, you can read it. Okay, so this is the context of what we're talking about here. The text said, this raises a question of how there can be four truths distinct from the two truths when it is clearly stated by the meeting of the Father and Son Sutra, as well as Nagarjuna's Fundamental Wisdom, that the number of truths is exhausted within the division of the two truths. So then, in response to that, or as an answer to that, Chandrakirti's commentary confirms that there is no truth which is not encompassed within the two truths. Everything is included in the two truths. The four truths, he explained, were taught to demonstrate that what is to be abandoned or relinquished is the class of the afflicted phenomena. So what does that mean? In the Prajnaparamita Sutra, there are two sets of phenomena. The afflicted phenomena, how many of those are there? You remember? Anyone know? Well, so in the Prajnaparamita, you would know, where's Doris? Doris, do you remember? In the Prajnaparamita Sutra, we say the 108 phenomena from form to omniscient mind. So some of those, one portion of those are called the afflicted phenomena, like form and so forth. And then there's another section that are called, what is he called? The class of enlightened phenomena. So to respond to this question, Chandrakirti's commentary confirms that there's no truth not included or encompassed within the true truths. The four truths he explained were taught to demonstrate that what is to be abandoned or relinquished, that is, the class of afflicted phenomena. I don't know why he has it in parentheses. That's actually in Lama Tsongkhapa's text, includes the origin, the cause, and suffering. That is to say, when you talk about cause and effect, suffering is the effect of the cause of suffering, right? The cause of suffering or the origin of suffering is the cause, and its effect is suffering. And to demonstrate that what is to be affirmed, the class of enlightened phenomena, includes the path, which is the cause of cessation, which is its effect. Is it actually, is the truth of the path actually the cause of cessation? Mikhail, what do you think?
It is not the substantial cause, but it must be one of the conditions.
Why could it not be the cause of cessation? Stephen, you're unmuted.
Because the path is the mind.
Oh, I thought Stephen was going to answer because I wasn't chastising you for being muted, Stephen. Stephen, why couldn't it be the cause of cessation?
Well, so I was thinking, Venerable George, that the cause of cessation is the direct realization of emptiness.
That's not what I'm thinking. Nadine knows.
I think, Venerable George, if cessation had a cause, it would not be permanent. It would be a product.
Right. Cessation is permanent, a permanent phenomena, right? So permanent phenomena, such as emptiness and so forth, do not have causes. So it could not be actually the cause, but it is meditating on the path provides the condition. Maybe this is what Mikhail was getting at, to bring about that cessation. Minto, I'm just going to go read just a little bit more before I get to you. Sorry. Of these, the Four Noble Truths, the commentary states, that means the Madhyamaka Vatara Bhasham by Chandrakirti, his auto commentary, states that the truth of suffering, its origin, that's the second noble truth, and the path, the truth of the path, belong to the conventional truth, while the truth of cessation belongs to the ultimate truth, or is an ultimate truth. Okay, Minto, what are you thinking?
I just have a question about the truth again. I guess when I think about the truth, the conventional truth, basically something like, I look at the iPhone and it exists, but if I look at it at a molecular level, it's sort of, momentarily disappearing and vibrating or whatever.
Right.
But I look at truth like mathematical truth, like 1 + 1 is equal to 2.
Yeah, you're an MIT graduate, of course. Yeah.
Yeah, all habit, but
what was your major?
Mathematics.
Mathematics. Okay, yeah. So you see it kind of like that. So but here, even for when we talk about quantum physics or mathematics or whatever things, the what appears to our mind when we're thinking of these things, whether we imagine a photon as being a wave or as a particle or as something that's mysterious, whatever way we imagine these things, they are appearing to our mind as though they inherently existed. So that's the difference. All of those things are still conventional truths. They still have total validity for the world. You can land on Mars with a rover within, I don't know what the distance that they planned to land was, but it was, incredible precision on the basis of Newtonian mechanics and other, other kinds of computations. All of those are conventional truths. So it's not as though saying that conventional truths are not really true. That doesn't demean conventional truth, because they do have validity, right? They're valid. Conventional truths, from Lama Tsongkhapa's point of view, conventional truths are validly established. They are, they are valid, but they are not true in the sense that what appears to the mind is not exactly how they're actually existing. Okay, I'm throwing a lot of material at you here. We're going slowly because this knot that Richard said his mind was tied up into is, it's complicated. Mintu, you have another thought? You still have your hand up.
No, I was just thinking, I trying to ask that, when I think of like a truth, like mathematical truth, it's not impermanent, right? Yeah, 1 + 1 is equal to 2 today, and tomorrow it will still be 2, and the day after it will still be 2. So it's sort of like imperishable truth. So
well, even then, in another universe with different dimensions, 1 + 1 might not be 2. 1 + 1 might be 1. 1 + 1 might be something else. But anyway, let's leave that aside. Any other question? We're about to end. Any other question about today's material? Doris.
Thank you, Venerable. Just a technical point. In my notes and from previous classes from your teachings, mindfulness is not omnipresent. It's an object ascertaining factor. Just wanting to clarify.
Yeah. So who is reading from Stephen, were you reading from the book that said mindfulness was an omnipresent mental factor? Stephen?
Yeah, Venerable George, just looking for that list. I said feeling, discernment, intention, contact, and attention.
Okay, so mindfulness also is not an omnipresent mental factor. Mindfulness.
This is
no, that's the standard
bachelor's terminology.
Yeah, that's completely standard. So both mindfulness and samadhi or concentration, tingnazen, are object ascertaining mental factors.
Right.
They're only present when you have gotten at the object. Okay, thanks for that clarification, Doris. So one thing I wanted to mention also, how many people here took the Krishnacharya Chakrasambhara empowerment with His Holiness? Maybe it was like a month or so ago. 1, 2. So keep your hands up. So I'm seeing John, Anna, Sean, William. Oh yeah, but William, you didn't take it as an empowerment. Doris. Okay, so I have received a translation of the sadhana that was done in Taiwan a couple of years ago by someone. If Jennifer were present, I'm not sure if the name of the person, I can't tell if it's a man or a woman. So I will make that available, and sometime in the coming weeks, maybe in our break or maybe sooner, I'll give an explanation of how to how to practice that for those who took that empowerment. Paul, you didn't take that empowerment, the Krishnacharya?
No, I did not. I do not feel like I am ready for Mother Tantra practices.
Oh, okay. I thought you had. Okay. Is John already gone?
John's there.
Oh, okay. John, did you take? You did. Okay. Okay. So any last question before we end? Okay. So lots of knots, K-N-O-T-S. I'll read a little bit before, read a little bit after. I'll post this section from Jeffrey Hopkins' explanation about emptiness, and some other quotes from the Father and Son, Meeting of the Father and Son Sutra. And we'll continue next week. So, Mary Ellen, would you like to put up the dedication prayers? Oh, that was nice. Some complicated Svatantrika or something. Again, coming up there? Okay.
Sorry, just a sec.
Yeah, okay.
Venerable George, just so you know, I put on the chat already the pages 405 and 406 of Meditation Emptiness, but I can send it to you so you don't have to make the PDF.
Well, I think it goes beyond 406, maybe not.
Oh, okay. All right, that's fine then.
I'll post it up there also, but if you posted that maybe redundant is okay. Mary Ellen, you okay?
No.
Okay, while you're searching, let's do our dedication. Due to these virtues that we've created today, and the virtues we created in the past, even dedicating the virtues that we will create in the future, making strong aspiration, may, in whatever way they ripen, may they become the cause of our continued spiritual development. From life to life, up to and including the achievement of enlightenment, may they ripen in such a way that I can become enlightened in order to perfectly, spontaneously, effortlessly, without error, lead all sentient beings out of suffering into everlasting blissful happiness due to these virtues, which includes also not just merits, but also the accumulation of wisdom. Sort of making a strong aspiration, strong wish. May these, sort of like, like when you dedicate your in your will, may this money be used to build a Dharma center or something like that. May these merits ripen in such a way that they are not just simply used up in one experience in the future, pleasurable experience, contaminated happiness within cyclic existence, but in whatever way they ripen, may they become the cause of my continued spiritual development in order to benefit sentient beings perfectly. And then seal that conventional dedication in a meditation on the emptiness of the three spheres, the virtues, the merits and collection of wisdom, appear to our mind just like mathematical equations is inherently existent, but they are empty of inherent existence. The goals dedicated to continuation of human rebirths, ascending the grounds and stages up to and including enlightenment for the benefit of sentient beings, that too appears to our mind in some way as existing, and it is validly true, but they do not inherently exist. They don't exist the way that they appear to our mind, that our mind grasps at them. And the action of dedicating, trying to join these merits with those results, that too is empty of inherent existence. And then just the wish or prayer of bodhicitta, may this supreme precious bodhicitta that has not arisen arise and grow, and may that which has arisen not diminish but increase more and more. So you're familiar with that from our talk about the 37 factors of enlightenment, the 4 special abandonings or special endeavors. And then you spiritual guides who are my eyes for viewing all the infinite scriptures, supreme gateways for the fortunate ones traveling to liberation, engaging as you do with skillful means, moved by love and mercy, all illuminating spiritual friends, please live a long and stable life. And then the prayer for the quick return of Lama Zopa. Do you have that, Mary Ellen? Okay. Good to have these at your fingertip in the future. You can plop them up there. I'm thinking of shortening my Zoom name. But you can see the Churinoff sort of cuts off my chin unless I stick my head up. So Nadine and others have short names, and so you can see your chins. Okay. So, okay. Peerless teacher and assembly of children of the victorious ones, the conquerors, the Buddhas and the Bodhisattvas, Shravakas and Pratika Buddhas, victorious Losang, that's sort of recognizing Losang Drakpa, Lama Khapa, that's his ordination name, as a conqueror, as a Buddha. You are the father and your spiritual sons, along with the lineage masters, all the objects of refuge of the infinite realms. Please bestow the virtue and goodness of accomplishing this prayer here and now. Holding this and spreading Shakyamuni's precious and complete teachings through explanation and practice, you, Lama Zopa, wore the armor of patience that is never discouraged. Incomparable, venerable Guru, to you I make this request. While striving single-pointedly for the sake of the conqueror's teachings, Buddha's teachings, the sole gateway through which all benefit and happiness emerge, and striving single-pointedly for mother living beings, you suddenly departed to peace. You suddenly passed away. What a great loss for us. Nevertheless, through the undeceiving truth of the blessings, the oceanic blessings of the three jewels, and the great waves of bodhicitta of the bodhisattvas, who are the children of the conquerors, the children of the victorious ones, may the smile of a reincarnation swiftly beam in glory for us fortunate disciples. So you can think of this as not only a prayer, but a dedication. May these merits ripen in such a way that any obstacles for the accomplishment of that prayer, for the quick recognition of the reincarnation of Lama Zopa Rinpoche, may our virtues become antidote to any obstacles in our own minds, in the minds of others, due to not proper Guru devotion and so forth. Okay, thank you very much. Good to see you all. Hope to see some of you on Monday in our discussion group, and certainly next Saturday. Okay, take care.
Thank you very much.